Cape Cod Broadcasting weaves the listening environments of 99.9 WQRC, Ocean 104.7, WFCC Classical 107.5, Cape Country 104, and CapeCon.com's website experience to reflect the lifestyles of the people who live, work, and play on Cape Cod. We hope that you enjoy this podcast.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal. We're going in-depth on the ballot questions in advance of the November 4th election. On the ballot in the towns in the Cape and Islands Senate District is a non-binding question put forward by the Cape Downwinders, the group that wants to shut down the Pilgrim Nuclear Power Plant. The question asks voters to expand the radiological plume exposure emergency planning zone around the Pilgrim Nuclear Power Station in Plymouth. The zone is 10 miles now. The group wants it to be expanded to include all of Barnstable, Dukes, and Nantucket counties. In other words, Cape Cod, Martha's Vineyard, and Nantucket. I'm speaking with Diane Turco, a founder of the Cape Downwinders. Diane, thank you for being with us here today.
Oh, and thank you for having me.
Let's begin by explaining what the Cape Downwinders are and what your mission is.
Okay. Well, Cape Downwinders is a grassroots citizens organization that is trying to close the Pilgrim Nuclear Power Station through a democratic process because of the ongoing and imminent dangers that Pilgrim Nuclear Power Reactor poses to the public.
And how many members do you have in the group?
Well, we actually say that all Cape Codders are Downwinders because we're all at the same risk. So for members, we don't have a membership. We're just kind of an open group.
And how did you get involved in this?
Well, I got involved in 1988 when the Pilgrim Nuclear Reactor was shut down for 2 years, and it was the restart was a battle where all elected officials, including the governor, our senators, Congressman Gary Studs, it was way back then, called on the Nuclear Regulatory Commission not to restart until public health and safety issues were addressed, and it was the Nuclear Regulatory Commission restarted Pilgrim over the objections of all our elected officials. And from there, I thought this is really outrageous that the citizens and those that represent public safety have no voice in it. So I've been working since then. Actually, this public advisory question has been considered at the State House since 1987, calling for an expanded emergency planning zone because we have been an acknowledged population at risk for a very long time.
Since 1987, that's a long time. Now, what's happened in those years? Why hasn't this been expanded?
Well, it has passed in the House, it has passed in the Senate, but it never passed together in a concurring year. That's a good question. Why hasn't it been expanded? It's important, and we don't know. It could be the lobbying of the utility to expand the emergency planning zone would set a precedent that public safety is a serious concern.
And getting back to the Downwinders, because people may know of you from being in the news recently, and some of your recent efforts have included the Mother's Day trespassing on the plant property and a trial about that recently concluded. Explain what that was all about.
Okay, well, actually, our mission for the grandmother's trial was to really bring Dr. Martin Luther King's words alive when he wrote in Letter from a Birmingham Jail about the method called creative tension. And he described creative tension as going to a community and identifying a problem and then dramatizing that problem so it can no longer be ignored. So on Mother's Day, when 4 grandmothers stepped over onto Entergy property to plant flowers, it was an expression of our rage that children and babies are the most susceptible to the ionizing radiation that is ongoing released by the Pilgrim Nuclear. So Pilgrim Nuclear is not only threatening the population on Cape Cod from a catastrophic accident and plume exposure, but it is ongoing danger right now.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal. We're talking about the ballot questions, and in this segment, we're focusing on a question that would expand the radiological plume exposure emergency planning zone at the Pilgrim Nuclear Power Plant. And going right to the ballot question, Diane, what is the reasoning behind this question? Why are you bringing it forward now? You said you've been trying to get it passed in the legislature since 1987. Tell us why this has risen to the surface this year.
Okay. Well, the public advisory question to expand the emergency plan, to expand actually the plume exposure emergency planning zone to include Barnstable, Duke, and Nantucket counties, it calls on our elected officials to take concrete action for attention to our risks considering the continued operation of Pilgrim Nuclear in Plymouth. It's one of the 9 worst operating reactors in the U.S. This question builds upon an effort, as I said, to expand the emergency planning zone from 1987, again, calling attention to the expendable population on the Cape and Islands. A bill has never passed both of the houses concurrently, and last year it died in the Joint Committee on Public Health. This bill was sponsored by Senator Wolf and Representative Peake, and they've been both outspoken proponents of closing Pilgrim because of the public safety concerns. In an expanded zone, so this might help folks. Expanding the plume exposure, EPZ would acknowledge that we were a population at serious risk beyond ingestion dangers. Currently, the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency plan is to have Cape Codders, number 1, shelter in place, number 2, take potassium iodide or KI pills, and then number 3, be relocated. Now, I hope people on Cape Cod understand that shelter in place means that you would stay in your home and stay away from windows, but it only provides 10% protection for 2 hours. And that is documented on the Massachusetts Emergency Management website. Taking potassium iodide, I don't know if folks know what that does. In a radioactive plume, there would be radioactive iodine, among other isotopes such as cesium and strontium, that are damaging to everyone, particularly children and infants. And KI only protects the thyroid from radioactive iodine. It floods your thyroid with salt so that radioactive iodine doesn't uptake into your thyroid. So it only protects the thyroid, not the child. And that's something that we say because the strontium, the cesium, and other radioactive isotopes will still be in that plume, and people will still have exposure to those damaging isotopes. And then the last part is relocating. MEMA has stated that there will be no evacuation of Cape Cod, so they are already acknowledging that we are a population that will be exposed to a radioactive plume, and they will relocate us later. That is unacceptable. So most Cape and Islands folks don't know about these plans, and our local emergency responders have had little or no input into their development. So in an expanded zone, the Barnstable Emergency Management responders would be included in emergency notification systems, methods, and procedures planning group, which may have an impact on their townspeople rather than being kept out of planning. Real-time air monitoring, emergency communications, public education, and education identification of radiological shelters and other recommendations would be implemented. One of our major concerns is that an assessment of radiological shelters could determine the adequacy or lack of protection for the public on Cape Cod and the islands. And I'm sure that most people who are listening would say, we don't have radiological shelters here. So these are huge issues that need to be taken into consideration.
Now, one thing I thought was interesting is that this ballot question will appear in the towns that are in the Cape and Islands Senate District, but not the towns that are in the Plymouth and Barnstable District. And I guess the Plymouth and Barnstable District includes 3 off-Cape towns, Plymouth, Pembroke, and Kingston, which are probably already within the zone. But then it also includes Sandwich, Bourne, and Falmouth, which perhaps might be even more interested in this ballot question. Did you try to get it on the ballot in the other district as well?
We talked about developing the question through the state representative districts or the state senatorial district. That's how the state sets up non-binding public advisory questions. So we chose to go the state Senate district route, and Senator Dan Wolf is totally on board with us. He is one of the most outspoken proponents and persuasive voices in the state government for arguing for responsible shutdown of Pilgrim. But we wanted to give him more public support, and Sarah Peake, who also supported the legislation, more public support when they go to the State House because, like I said, the bill died in committee last year. So we chose to do the state Senate district ballot. The state has certain requirements. It needs to be directed directly to the state senator, and that's why it's to Senator Wolf, and it needs to be related to a question that will appear as legislation. And so that's why Cape Downwinders chose to have it to Senator Wolf and based on this legislation because it meets the 2 requirements that are required by the state Attorney General's office. for public advisory, non-binding public advisory questions.
And so the legislature could expand this zone through a bill. And is this the only other way to expand the zone, is through a ballot question or through a vote, or can it be done through a federal route, or was this really the only angle left to you?
Well, if you look, the federal route would be going through the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and they basically deny that we're a population at risk, even though the plan is for us to take the radiation hit and then be relocated. And again, too, that's just so unacceptable. So this legislation is asking, the big question: are we really safe? Are we really safe? Take a look at this situation, and are we really safe?
And you worked with county emergency planning officials in crafting this ballot question. Is that right?
No, actually, it was the Cape Downwinders plan to put this forward to the citizens. I think it was last spring, all 15 towns on Cape Cod and 5 on the Vineyard voted for Governor Patrick to call upon the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to uphold their mandate for public safety and close Pilgrim, because public safety cannot be assured here. So we're taking that route again. It's citizen action. It's calling on the people to use their voices to affect change.
So are there people out in the community who are opposed to expanding this zone?
No, I haven't heard of any negative comments regarding expanding the emergency planning zone. In fact, I think Cape Codders are very well informed, and like Dr. Helen Caldicott always says, an informed democracy makes responsible decisions. And I think there's a lot of support for this question.
And in the last minute or less we have left, any last words to leave with voters on this question?
Sure. The continued operation of the Pilgrim Nuclear Power Reactor is a socialized risk for privatized profit. Citizens need to have input into any planning as our right to safety. Cape Downwinders holds the position that the only way for the public to be safe is to remove the threat by closing Pilgrim and removing the highly irradiated spent fuel from the reactor pool to dry casks. Until then, an expansion of the plume exposure EPZ will place us in the real-life risk area so that our legitimate concerns can be seriously considered. We also have advocated for any legislation to include the following statement. If at any time following the development, review, or approval of state and local radiological emergency plans, the governor determines that said plans are no longer adequate to protect the public health and safety, he or she shall notify the Federal Emergency Management Agency to secure withdrawal of the plans and call for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to revoke the operating license and begin the decommissioning process. That means if in this emergency planning zone the government determines that the people are not safe, then we call on the governor to withdraw approval of the plans and call on the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to close Pilgrim, because public safety cannot be assured. And that's the responsibility of our elected officials.
And unfortunately, we're out of time. Diane, thank you so much for being with us here today.
Well, thank you, Laura, for the opportunity to explain question 5. It will be question 6 in Chilmark and question 8 in Orleans. But, we hope there's a resounding support for this legislation.
We've been going in-depth on the ballot questions in advance of the November 4th election. You can find more on all the ballot questions on our website, capecod.com, and click on the election banner. I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal.
This podcast is a presentation of Cape Cod Broadcasting, which is solely responsible for its content. Thank you for listening. For more information, please visit us at capecodbroadcasting.com.